Feel that it was a target that the enemy was very much interested in, that he would want to seize it. And I wanted to fight him in the hinterland rather than allow him to get down among the people, which would have been very costly in casualties.
Our objective was to inflict casualties on the enemy at Khe Sanh, thus compelling him to shift more of his forces there from the southern part of the country. In that way, it would be possible for our people to organize in order to liberate the south. But because we drew larger enemy forces into Khe Sanh and allowed them to supply and reinforce themselves, we could not turn the encounter into a final big battle.
Days after they began to shell Khe Sanh, the communist commanders issued final orders for their nationwide offensive against South Vietnam cities. The longest battle was waged for Hue, the old imperial capital. Survivors of the battle tell different stories. One is a refugee with families still in Vietnam.
The night of Tet, the Lunar New Year, was different from other New Year's Eves. Firecrackers went on longer. They came faster and faster. There were more, many more than on other New Year's. The sounds of firecrackers and gunfire interspersed. Nobody realized that it was the gunfire of communists who were overrunning the city of Hue.
At that time, I was at the nursing school, now the secondary school for nurses. I was among the students there, and weapons were smuggled into us. At the nursing school, we also managed to print a number of leaflets and tracts for the National Liberation Front, calling on the population to remain calm and not carry out reprisals when its forces entered the city. For example, when people arrested an enemy agent, they were to turn him over to the cadres.
Communist soldiers came in and asked my father his occupation and his residence. They told my father to describe his background. My father replied that he was Deputy District Chief of Treo Phong and that he was already old and would retire in 1 year. They wrote down everything, then went on to other houses.
The North Vietnamese and Viet Cong dominated Hue for 3 days. They rounded up South Vietnamese officials and government sympathizers. Some eluded arrest and fled with other civilians. Many did not.
My father was ordered to attend a study session for 10 days, and he was told that he would be released afterward. My mother and I accompanied him to the school. There were about 100 persons there. We stayed there until we saw my father leave. My mother and I were very worried because in 1946, my father's father had been arrested in the same way by the communists. He never returned.
The people so hated those who had tortured them in the past that when the revolution came to Hue, they rooted out those despots to get rid of them, just as they would poisonous snakes who, if allowed to live, would commit further crimes.
Troops of South Vietnam's 1st Infantry Division joined U.S. Marines in the counterattack against Hue. Many were fighting for their homes and for an historic city. The Nguyen emperors had built the citadel, Hue's walled fortress, early in the 19th century. They modeled it on the impregnable Forbidden City in Peking, the Chinese capital. The North Vietnamese army set up a command post next to the throne, in the Palace of Perfect Peace. Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Regiment U.S. Marines, headed for the citadel.
I think my most vivid memory as I went in was in talking with one of the other company commanders who had already been participating there in the action for a couple of days. And in a very matter-of-fact way, without a great deal of embellishment on his part, he just frightened the hell out of me in telling me how bad it was. And I thought in my mind right then and there that, you know, hey, here I am with a fresh company, and I knew without having to be told that what my mission was going to be the next day was going to be to go try to take this fortified tower position along the east wall. And sure enough, that evening when I went in to be briefed, Major Thompson, he just said, Delta Company, tomorrow you're going to take that east wall. And I said, aye, aye, sir, and went at it.
That's the worst thing. Riding around and running the sewers and the gutters anywhere. Be anywhere. Just hope you can stay alive from day to day. Everybody just wants to go back home and go to school. That's about it.
You lost any friends?
Quite a few. We lost one the other day. The whole thing stinks, really.
2 days later, on February 14th, Delta Company took the fortified tower, then moved on.
We tried our best to avoid malicious damage, if you would. We just didn't shoot at walls just to blow them down. But when we had to shoot at a house, we shot at a house. When we had to destroy a house, we destroyed it. But we didn't go in there with the express purpose that this is a wonderful opportunity to show how great our weapons are and how much destructive power they possess. As a result of their being so entrenched, it required for us to bring maximum firepower at our disposal to eliminate them. But we were fortunate in that we did have the weapons that were capable of rooting the NVA and the Viet Cong out of their positions.
Thì nó bắt đầu là dùng bằng hỏa lực, là bằng phi pháo.
They directed artillery fire into the area where I lived.
Thì quá như thứ là nó sáng bằng nhà cửa rồi đến cây cối ở nương.
All the houses and trees were destroyed.
Như thứ là mảnh đất. Thì ở trong này á là đồng thời là nó bắn bằng.
They also directed rocket fire against the homes of the people in my neighborhood.
Thì vào trong ở đấy là dân thường là chấm băng.
The people here used kerosene and gasoline, and so their homes burst into flames when they were hit by the rockets.
Thì dầu và xăng thì nó bốc lên nó cháy, thì ở trong đó là cụ già rồi là trẻ em.
Old folks, children and pregnant women who could not flee were burned alive in their homes.
Thì điều nằm trong không thể là chạy ra được, thì bị cháy ngốt trong ngôi nhà đó.
And throughout all of this, you constantly had this fear. Not so much that you were going to die, because I think to a certain degree that was a given. This was combined with the semi-darkness type of environment that we were fighting in because of the low overcast, the fact that we didn't see the sun, gave it a very eerie, spooky look. You had this utter devastation all around you. You had this horrible smell. I mean, you just cannot describe the smell of death, especially when you're looking at it a couple of weeks along. It's horrible. And it was there when you ate your rations. It was almost like you were eating death. You couldn't escape it.
After 24 days of fierce fighting, South Vietnamese Army units entered the citadel and raised the flag of South Vietnam. Hue had been saved, but destroyed. "75% of its people were homeless. 8,000 soldiers and civilians on both sides had been killed in the fighting. But the final toll was higher.
In 1969, a communist defected and told the chief of Thu Tien province that the communists had buried a number of people in the Xuan O and Xuan Dai areas. The province chief ordered the bodies dug up to exhume the remains of those who had been arrested during the Tet Offensive. I, along with others whose relatives had been killed, inspected the remains. The smell was terrible, but we had loved and missed our relatives, and it was our duty to search for them. Those who found the remains of their relatives were gratified, and those who could not were sad. I continued looking along with others. At Phu Du, 8 more tunnels were dug up. Strangely, all the skulls of the skeletons were smashed. Their arms were tied, and their positions indicated that they died kneeling. The skeletons were not stretched out. They were bundled up or huddled.